Gracie arrived on the 29th of August 2011. And when she was born, she was, absolutely beautiful, and like most parents kind of instantly fell in love with her. And she, developed really typically. She was a really bright toddler and really funny. And she was cat obsessed as well. Like, cats were her absolute favourite thing in the whole entire world. She was just the light of our lives, really, she was our only child at that point in time. She was just our absolute world. She had started being sick in the car, sort of in the few months leading up to it, but we just sort of put that down to car sickness. She'd had sort of this really terrible cough on and off that hadn't really gone away. She had a high temperature, obviously she was at nursery, and then she just sort of got progressively more and more lethargic that week. Like, she just didn't really want to get up off the sofa. I realised that she sort of down her left-hand side was sort of twitching, her arm was twitching, and she was still she was talking to me, but could tell there was something, really wrong. So we were taken to Manchester Children's Hospital, to the A&E department there, and they took her through for a CT scan. And it was quite a lot later that evening that a couple of doctors came to us and basically said they'd found a really large mass in the right frontal lobe of her brain. 2 days after that, she had about 9-hour surgery, which was sort of as successful as it could have been. They were confident that they'd removed the majority of the tumour. Basically, her treatment was going to be 6 months chemotherapy with 6 weeks of radiotherapy. So from the point of being diagnosed, I think we sort of lived at the hospital for kind of about 3.5 months it was before we managed to actually get home for a short period of time. Chemotherapy came to an end around about July time. That would have been 2014. So she rang the end of treatment bell. She was doing great at that point. She obviously, was taking some time to kind of recover and, get back on her feet. But, essentially it was the best possible situation we could have been in. So she started school in September, which would have been 2015. And then the routine scan that we had in October, the following month, that showed there was new tumours. So it was at that point then that we found out that she'd relapsed. So she'd been around about 15 months. We'd had sort of the all clear result from. With relapse, there isn't, a treatment protocol that's been proven to work for relapsed ATRT. So we were kind of fairly limited in terms of what we could do. I mean, the thing at that point was that she was well, she was still going to school. She was, again, doing everything that you'd normally want her to be doing. And that just became the focus at that point, really, was just kind of, keeping a quality of life for as long as we could. And actually, we managed to do that for far longer than we thought we might have done. Effectively, it was what treatments can we try, and there was various clinical trials and various different drugs that we did try, some with more success than others. But it gave us, another sort of 18 months with her that we probably didn't at that point think that, we would have ever had. For the vast majority of that time, she was really well, so we were really grateful to kind of get all of that extra time. And then she had a really big seizure, and she didn't sort of regain consciousness after that seizure. That was when we were back at home at that point, and sort of had to call the ambulance in the early hours, and we were taken back in, and she never actually came round from that seizure. She was in ICU at that point. From there, we had a fairly long time with her. We knew that was going to be how things ended. We just didn't know when. So I think we were just always really grateful that we got as long as we did, and we managed to do the things that we did. We'd had incredible support from kind of, friends and family, and giving her a wonderful send-off, really, and just giving everyone an opportunity to say goodbye as well was really important. I think it was probably her little brother and sister then coming along relatively quickly afterwards that kind of, kept me going and kept us all going, really. And kind of, I always like to think that she kind of sent them on to keep us busy, I think, and to keep us distracted once she'd gone. The work that Kidscan does is so crucial from the research side of things. I think the research of the treatments itself is so critical, and even children that do survive, they've left with any number of health problems afterwards, and that's just because ultimately we're using decades old adult drugs in smaller doses for children's bodies, which is obviously just going to have a devastating effect. Without work like that, there would probably be no treatments at all really for particularly for cancers like Gracie's that are so rare really. It's probably those pretty mundane things that I think back on and remember more often. It really does just sort of change that whole perspective, and the littler things just become so important really when your time's limited together.